Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Chapter 23. The Ebb Tide Runs. The Coracle, as I had ample reasons to know before I had done with her, was a very safe boat for a person of my height and weight, both buoyant and clever in a seaway. But she was the most cross-grained, lopsided craft to manage. Do as you please, she always made more leeway than anything else, and turning round and round was the maneuver she was best at. Even Ben Gunn himself has admitted that she was the queer to handle till you knew her way. Certainly I did not know her way. She turned in every direction but one I was bound to go. The one most part of the time we were broadside on, and I was very sure that I should have never made the ship at all but for the tide. By good fortune, paddle as I pleased, and the tide was still sweeping me down. There lay the Hispaniola right in fairway, hardly to be missed. First she loomed before me like a blot of something yet blacker than darkness. Then her spars and hulls began to take shape. Then, the next moment, it seemed, for the further, the brisker grew the turn of the ebb, for I was alongside her hawser, and laid hold. The hawser was as taut as a bowstring, so strong she pulled upon her anchor. All round the hull, in the blackness, the rippling current bubbled and chattered like a little mountain stream. One cut with my sea gully, and the Hispaniola would go humming down the tide. So far so good, but it next occurred to my recollection that the taut hawser, suddenly cut, is a thing as dangerous as a kicking horse. 10 to 1, if I was so foolhardy as to cut the Hispaniola from her anchor, and I and the coracle would be knocked clean out of the water. This brought me to a full stop, if I had fortune not again so particularly favoured me, and I had had to abandon my design. The light airs which had been blowing from the south-east and the south had been hauled round the nightfall into the south-west. Just while I was meditating, a puff came, caught the Hispaniola, and forced her up into the current. And to my great joy, I felt the hawser slacken in my grasp, and the hand by which I held it dip for a second under the water. With that I made up my mind, and took out the gully, opened it with my teeth, and cut one strand after another, till the vessel only swung by two. Then I lay quiet, waiting to sever these last winds when the strain should be even more lightened by a breath of wind. All this time I had heard the sound of the loud voices from the cabin, but to say the truth, my mind had been so entirely taken up with other thoughts that I thought scarcely given ear. Now, however, I had nothing else to do, but I began to pay more heed, and once I recognized for the coxswain's Israel hands that had been Flint's gunner in the former days, and once was, of course, my friend in the red nightcap. Both men were plainly worse for drink, and they were still drinking, for even while I was listening, one of them, with a drunken cry, opened the stern window and threw something out, which I divined to be an empty bottle. They were not only tipsy, it was plain and they were furiously angry. Oaths flew like hailstones, and every now and then there came forth such an explosion that I thought sure to be end in blows. But each time the quarrel passed off, the voice grumbled lower for a while until the next crisis came, and in its turn passed away without result. On the shore I could see the glow of the great campfire burning warmly through the shoreside trees. Someone was singing a dull old droning sailor song, with a droop and a quaver at the end of every verse, and seemingly to no end to it all but the patience of the singer. I had heard it on the voyage more than once, and remembered these words. But one man to our crew alive, what put the seeds to 75? And I thought it was a dirty ditty rather too dolefully appropriate for a company and met with such cruel losses. But indeed, from what I saw, all these buccaneers were as callous as the sea as they sailed on. At last a breeze came to me, and the schooner skittled and drew nearer in the dark. I felt the hawser slacken once more, and with a good tough effort cut the last fibres through. The breeze had little action on the coracle, and I was almost instantly swept against the bows of the Hispaniola. At the same time, the schooner began to turn upon her heel, spinning slowly end for end across the current. I wrought like a fiend, for I expected the moment to be swamped, and I found I could not push the coracle directly off. Now I shoved straight astern. At the length I was cleared of my dangerous neighbour, and it gave the last impulsion. My hands came across a light cord that was trailing overboard in the stern bulwarks. I instantly grabbed it. Why should I have done I can solidly say that it was at first a mere instinct, but once I had it in my hands and found it fast, the curiosity began to get the upper hand. I, sh- I determined I should have had one look through the cabin window. I pulled my hand. I pulled in my hand overhand the cord, and when I judged it myself, it rose at an infinite risk about half my height, and thus commanded the roof and a slice of interior of the cabin. By this time the schooner and her little consort were gliding pretty swiftly through the water. Indeed, we had already fetched up a level with a campfire, and the ship was talking, as sailors say, loudly and treading with innumerable ripples with an incessant weltering splash. And until I got in my eye above a window sill, I could not comprehend why the watchman had taken no alarm. One glance, however, was sufficient, and it was only one glance that I durst take the unsteady skiff. It showed me Hans and his companions locked together in a deadly wrestle, each with a hand upon each other's throat. I dropped upon the thwart again, none too soon, for I was near overboard, and I could see nothing for the moment but these two furious, encrimsoned faces, swaying together under the smoky lamp, and I shut my eyes to let them grow once more familiar with the darkness. The endless ballet had come to an end at last, and the whole diminished company about the campfire had broken into a chorus I heard so often. 15 men on a dead man's chest, yo ho ho and a bottle of rum. Drink and the devil had gone for the rest, yo ho ho and a bottle of rum. I was just thinking how busy Drink and the devil were at the very moment in the cabin of the Hispaniola, and when I was surprised by a sudden lurch of the coracle, at the same moment she yawed sharply to seem to change her course. The speed in the meantime had strangely increased. I opened my eyes once more. All around me were little ripples, coming for a sharp brisk sound, slightly phosphorescent. The Hispaniola herself, a few yards in whose wake was being whirled along, seemed to stagger in her course, and I saw her spars tossed a little in the blackness of the night. I looked as longer. I made sure she was also wheeling to the southwards. I glanced over my shoulder, and my heart jumped against the ribs. There, right behind me, was the glow of the campfire. The current turned at right angles, sweeping along with it in the tall schooner and the dancing coracle, ever quickening, but ever bubbling higher, ever muttering louder. It went spinning through the narrows for the open sea. Suddenly the schooner in front of me gave a violent yaw, turning perhaps through 20 degrees, and almost at the same moment one shout followed another from on board. I could hear feet pounding on the companion ladder, and I knew that two drunkards had at last been interrupted in their quarrel and awake to a sense of their disaster. I lay flat in the bottom of that wrenched skiff, devout recommend to its spirits to its Maker, and at the end of the straits I made sure we must fall into some bar of raging breakers, where all my troubles would end speedily, and there I could perhaps bear to die. I could not bear to look upon my fate as it approached, so I must have been lain for hours, continually beaten to and fro upon the billows, now and again wetted with the flying sprays, and never ceasing to expect death at the next plunge. Gradually weary grew upon me, and numbness, occasional stupor, fell on my mind, even in the midst of my terrors, until sleep at last supervened, and in my sea-tossed coracle I lay and dreamed of home and the old Admiral Benbow.